On the riverside and weeks ago, two brothers, Jacob and Jefferson, are having an argument. An argument that leads to blows and to Jacob storming off. Fuming, Jefferson spots a body floating in the river, and so he dives in to save the person only to find out that it's Morbius the vampire, who is hungry and bites him. In the present day, Spider-Man is sick, and that sickness is causing his powers to fail, and he gets dizzy on a rooftop and falls to the ground unconscious. And in the Baxter building, a woman called Martine arrives, distressed and near fainting. She tells of her fiancé, who tried to cure a blood disease and turned himself into a vampire. When she mentions his name, Michael Morbius, Reed remembers having correspondence with him, and Martine says that she found his letters, as well as the letters from another scientist, Professor Hans Jorgensen. As Reed ponders the name, Johnny Storm gets bored of all this talking and leaves, preferring to take action and find this Hans Jorgensen himself, and hopefully find Spider-Man in the process to warn him of Morbius's return. And Morbius, who is hiding in a warehouse feeling guilty about a newly turned vampire Jefferson, is also looking for Hans Jorgensen, hoping that Jorgensen will have the ability to cure him, to turn him human once more. And when he wakes up again, Spider-Man also wants to find Hans Jorgensen, who is his biology teacher. He's hoping that Hans will have some solution, some insight into his mystery illness. With the three men chasing Hans Jorgensen, it's the Human Torch that finds the professor first, followed shortly by Spider-Man, interrupting his class in the process. After he makes them wait until that class is finished, they fill him in on Morbius. But before they can get into the whole vampire part, a scream on campus draws them away. It seems that Morbius got hungry on the way to visit the professor and killed a homeless man. The two heroes fight him, and while the Human Torch can keep him handled with a glowing fireball, the mystery illness is too much for Spider-Man, and he's too weak to even aim his webbing. The fight gets even more complicated when Jefferson arrives and convinces some other students that our heroes are just beating up a random guy. As Torch and Spidey are bombarded with thrown objects and tackled by teens, Jacob arrives to see his brother in the fight, and to not see Morbius until it's too late, and Morbius has bitten him. His vampire brother Jefferson leaps at Morbius to stop him and is knocked aside, cracking his head on the ground. But his actions save his brother, as the heroes rally and Morbius flees. But Jefferson's actions also cost him his life, as Jacob finds his brother dead and quietly weeps as Spider-Man and Torch leave. Before we follow up on Morbius, we go back to the moment after Peter saved Flash with the help of Doctor Strange. He thinks that Flash is going to steal Gwen from him, and then he gets so angry that he forgot to take photos of the whole event that he throws his camera off a building, forgetting how expensive it is. Luckily, it's saved by a man named Martin Blank, who vaults up to the rooftop and reveals his admiration for Spider-Man. But when Spider-Man returns the admiration, amazed at how nimble the man is, Martin refuses to accept the praise. Everyone knows he's an ugly, creepy-looking freak. And that night, as Martin lies in bed, we learn of his past. He was an orphan that was unwanted, which is why his surname was Blank. And the other orphans would laugh at him, call him a monkey because of how he looked and his penchant for climbing. When he got old enough, he joined the circus and was given a monkey costume. But instead of taking advantage of his acrobatic skills, they just wanted him as a clown, someone to laugh at. And he hated the laughter, and so he took his first paycheck and left. But now, after meeting Spider-Man, he knows exactly what he has to do. Back with Peter Parker, and he's exhausted and surprised when he finds Gwen and Aunt May waiting at his home. Gwen hugs him and has been worried about him, and when Aunt May begins to dote on her nephew, Gwen reminds her that she promised to stop babying Peter. Before Peter can understand what is happening, he falls asleep, missing Flash Thompson's arrival and missing Gwen admonishing Flash when he makes a gentle jibe at Peter's expense, missing her saying that he's the only man that she'll ever love. He does, unfortunately, wake up just long enough to see Gwen leave with Flash, and he believes himself right, that Gwen is leaving him, and he has nightmares about that reality, losing Gwen and losing Aunt May. He wakes 12 hours later, convinced that he's lost his girl. He doesn't want to lose Aunt May too, and he's worried about what Gwen has said about her, and so he calls. At home, a letter waits, addressed to Peter, but he gets no answer on the phone. Worried about his aunt, Peter leaves, swinging away as Spider-Man, but he doesn't get far before he's stopped by Martin Blank, now the Gibbon, and wearing his monkey costume. He wants to be Spider-Man's partner, to help him fight crime, and Spider-Man laughs at him, laughs at the costume, laughs at the idea of him wanting to help Spidey, and Martin Blank hates people laughing at him. But there's not much he can do. When he grabs Spider-Man, he's easily brushed off. When he throws Spider-Man off the side of the building, Spider-Man simply webs to a flagpole and swings away with more important things to do than hang around with the Gibbon. And so Martin Blank's last chance to be somebody has left, and he's all alone. Or so he thinks, as on a rooftop nearby, the eyes of a hunter watch him, eager to harness his hatred, harness his untrained energy, and use him as a tool against Spider-Man. And with that final story, Stan Lee leaves Amazing Spider-Man forever, apart from the occasional guest writing. In Doc Connor's lab, Hank Pym and Peter Parker are caught in an explosion. It seems that some combustive chemicals became mixed by accident. They were investigating some American Indian drugs for the government, and thankfully those drugs are safe, but now they need to clean the place up, with the help of Orky the dog. As they start the cleanup, there's a knock on the door. It's a gangster who wants the drugs that Curt Connors has, and he's kidnapped Billy Connors, Kurt's son, to get them. Although I'll point out here that no one in this comic calls him Billy. His own mother calls him Timmy Connors, and Hank calls him Bobby. But it's Billy. Hank Pym and Peter Parker are told to bring the drugs to Eagleneck Point at 10 o'clock or the kid gets it. But Hank and Peter have other plans. Hank shrinks down to Ant-Man and hops a lift on Orky the dog up to Eagleneck Point, and Peter Parker takes the car there, getting there first and stalling the gangsters until Ant-Man can catapult himself at one of them and command ants to climb all over another. But their ambush is thwarted when one of the gangsters grabs Billy and holds him at gunpoint, and our two heroes have to turn themselves in. They're taken to the gangsters' base, where they see the machines that the gangsters plan to use to synthesize the drugs that they're after. They also learn that Billy has been injected with an illness that will kill him if he doesn't get an antidote, and so Curt Connors better hurry up with those drugs. Unfortunately for all involved, Billy Connors has escaped, driven away in a car. The gangsters have lost their bargaining chip, and Billy might lose his life. Peter Parker suggests that they send Hank Pym after Billy and hold Peter hostage, and the villains think that that's a great idea with one extra detail. Both Hank and Peter will also be injected with the illness, giving them incentive to come back. And so, post-injection, Hank hops on his dog and races to the rescue of Billy Connors, finding the boy trapped in a hole. But when Hank tries to grow back to normal size, he finds that he can't, that whatever he was injected with is affecting his powers. So instead, still small, he lowers a rope down, ties it around a dying Billy, and gets his dog to pull them both to safety. Then, with the dog working the pedals and Ant-Man working the steering wheel, they begin the drive back. Elsewhere, with Hank gone and no one watching him, Peter Parker no longer needs to play the hostage. He easily breaks out of the ropes with his spider strength, and as Spider-Man, he swings down and easily dispatches almost every gangster. Unfortunately, the one that runs away is the one with the antidote. But fortunately, that gangster flees outside just as Ant-Man arrives, and Hank is able to stop him with a carefully placed nail and a command to his dog. Hank takes the antidote inside and finds Peter Parker still tied up, telling fake stories about how Spider-Man somehow knew about this gang and came to bust them all up. Then, Peter, Billy, and Hank all take the antidote, and Peter drives Billy to the hospital, worried that something is bothering Hank. And something is bothering Hank. Even though he's cured, Hank still can't grow back to normal size. But we'll never find out why, as we return to Martin Blank in New York City as he is visited by Kraven the Hunter. Kraven survived his last encounter with Kazar when Kazar kicked him off a cliff by grabbing hold of plants on the way down to slow his fall into one that just broke all of his bones rather than killed him. After he recovered in a cave, he went searching for Gog and found him dead, buried in quicksand, and he swore vengeance on Spider-Man. But he needs Martin Blank's help since his bones are still broken. And Martin agrees. The Gibbon will get his revenge on those that laughed at him. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Spider-Man is feeling guilty about how he treated Martin, but those thoughts are quickly forgotten when he finds that his Aunt May is missing, and a note from her about how she's going away for a while, that it's for the best. It must be because of what Gwen said to her, he thinks, and she'll never be able to hack it outside. But before he can panic some more, some police arrive at the door after a nosy neighbour spotted Spider-Man breaking in. So Spider-Man escapes and swings around the city angsting about all the ways that he let his Aunt May down before ending up at the Bugle. There, Robbie Robertson tells him that he's wanted for kidnapping after he was spotted in an old lady's home and that old lady is missing. Fortunately, Spider-Man still holds the note that exonerates him, and he makes up some story about Peter Parker asking him to retrieve it. Robbie is happy to hear that Spidey isn't a criminal. J. Jonah Jameson, less so. Meanwhile, at the Botanical Gardens, Martin Blank drinks the final series of potions to make him stronger. This, combined with the training that Kraven has given him in the last couple of hours, I guess, will make him an unstoppable force. But the final potion also alters his mind, brings out the beast hidden within, and Martin lunges for Kraven, the man responsible. But Kraven has experience fighting beasts, and even with the Gibbon's strength, Kraven is able to pin him down and hypnotize him with a glance, combining their minds into one. Now Kraven has control, and the Gibbon will be his tool for hunting Spider-Man. Spider-Man himself is too busy worried about his aunt. After a phone call with Gwen, where she takes responsibility for the words that she said, Peter goes out swinging as Spider-Man to get his mind off these troubles. On a rooftop, Spidey runs into the Gibbon, who instantly lashes out and knocks Spider-Man down before wrapping his ape hands around our hero's throat. As Kraven is in his head urging him to kill, Martin hesitates. He won't give in to the beast. That hesitation is all that Spider-Man needs to throw the Gibbon off of him, sending him off the side of the building. As Spider-Man swings down to catch his fallen foe, convinced that there was someone else behind the scenes, Kraven is angry at his failure. Weeks of planning all wasted, but he will have his revenge soon. Spider-Man drops the Gibbon off at a hospital, leaving him unconscious with a nurse and telling her to burn his ape costume. Then he swings away and gets back to what he does best, angsting about Aunt May. He remembers being there for her after Uncle Ben died, remembers how happy she was when he graduated, and remembers that one time that Doc Ock came to live with her. It seems that whatever evil Spider-Man fights eventually gets May mixed up in it. And so when he sees some gang members beating someone up in the street, he doesn't intervene. He runs away. And when a man calls for help from a window, he pretends that he doesn't hear. He can't be stopping crimes. He's going to do the right thing and find Aunt May. Changing into Peter Parker and briefly updating Harry, Peter makes his way back to the Bugle and learns that they have presented Spider-Man's actions differently. Spider-Man's true colour, yellow. While Peter gets sympathy from Betty and Robbie, Jonah freezes his pay, saying that he hasn't had a good photo from Peter since making him an employee. It seems he's upset about not being able to print the story about Spider-Man kidnapping an old lady, and he's taking it out on others. As Peter heads out to take some photographs and earn his salary back, he bumps into Aunt Anna and Mary Jane. After he shows them the note that May left that looks like her handwriting, Anna makes a comment that changes everything for Peter. Maybe she was forced to write it. As he changes back into Spider-Man, he goes over the facts. There's a crime wave going on, and Aunt May have been kidnapped. Perhaps someone knows his identity and has stolen May to get to him, and therefore the only way forward is to investigate the crime wave while taking photographs of the whole thing so that he can keep his job. So when he sees a gangster hassling someone in a car, he takes some photos and then he grabs the gangster out and swings him to a high ledge. With threats of violence, he's able to learn that the current crime wave is a war between this gangster's boss and someone else. As he continues the hunt with this extra information, Spidey doesn't notice Gwen and Flash below, as Gwen tells Flash that Spider-Man reminds her of all the wrong things she's done to Peter Parker. After hours of searching, Spider-Man's spider sense goes off as 3 men are breaking into a warehouse. He sets his camera up once more and swings down to beat them up, but it turns out that their boss had warned them about Spidey swinging down to beat them up, and so they're ready for him. And when they hit him, they hit hard. Harder than they should have been able to. As Spider-Man tries to hold on to consciousness, he grabs at one of the villains who are now fleeing and removes a harness with an amplifying power pack attached, the source of their unnatural power. But before he has time to look into this new development, his spider sense goes off once more strongly than he has ever felt it, and he hears a familiar voice, telling him that he has already learned too much. It's Aunt May's old lodger, Dr. Octopus, telling Spider-Man that he must die. Still feeling the side effects of his mystery illness, Peter Parker has nightmares about Morbius. After waking in a sweat and convincing his roommate Harry that he's okay, he swings away as Spider-Man in search of the vampire, who has been laying low since the last time they fought. Spidey figures that visiting Hans Jorgensen is his best bet, as Morbius will eventually go there. And he's right, Morbius does go there and kidnaps Professor Jorgensen, and Spider-Man arrives just in time to be caught red-handed, and have the kidnapping blamed on him. In Westchester, Professor Charles Xavier learns the news about the kidnapping, and since Hans was a friend of his, he psychically calls his students to him, his X-Men, and orders them to investigate. And this investigation apparently involves attacking Spider-Man, and so our hero suddenly finds his webbing snagged by Angel or frozen by Iceman. And when he fights back, he finds himself blasted by kinetic energy from Cyclops and then psychically held in place by Jean Grey. And with his illness, the fight proves too much, and Spider-Man passes out. When the X-Men return with him, Professor X is able to dive into his mind and learn that Spider-Man was not responsible for the kidnapping, but it was actually a vampire named Morbius. The Professor also learns about Spider-Man growing extra arms, and how he used an enzyme from Morbius to cure him of this. But that enzyme is killing Spider-Man, and they need both Morbius and Hans Jorgensen to save him. So the X-Men fly out again in a race against time, and find Morbius feasting on someone. Morbius is able to easily dispatch the 3 men of the party, and he grabs Jean Grey to use as a hostage, holding her between himself and Cyclops' kinetic blasts. But Cyclops shoots instead at a mirror behind Morbius, reflecting his blast and knocking the vampire out. With Morbius unconscious, Professor X psychically reaches out, using Jean Grey as a conduit to probe into Morbius' mind and find the location of Professor Jorgensen. With his location found, they return back, with Morbius and the Professor, and Spider-Man wakes to find that his condition has been cured, thanks to the help of everyone in the room. Happy to be alive and grateful for the help, Spider-Man leaps out of bed, kisses Jean Grey, and smashes out of a window, bizarrely to everyone's delight. Now, where were we? That's right, Doc Ock was telling Spider-Man that he must die, after Spider-Man discovered power harnesses used by Doc Ock's men. And so Doc Ock hits Spidey, sending that harness to the streets below, and then continues to keep beating our hero up, before pulling off his mask in the middle of the fight. Before Doc Ock can see Spider-Man's face, Spidey tries to web up the Doctor's eyes. Even though Doc has coated his glasses with a chemical enzyme and the web slides straight off, it still gives Spidey a chance to flee with his secret identity intact. But as he flees, he feels ill, almost falling off the wall he's perched on. It feels worse than that enzymic reaction from a few weeks ago cured by the X-Men, and Spider-Man doesn't know what's wrong. Could this be the end of Spider-Man? Meanwhile, Spider-Man's mask is thrown from the rooftops by Doc Ock, who is keen to get back to his gang war, and discovered by one Randy Robertson, who brings the mask to his father Robbie. And Robbie Robertson thinks that there's definitely a story behind this. And later, Doc Ock is back in his base and meeting with one of his gang. The gangster tells the Doc that he has traced Doc Ock's rival, Mr. H, to a nightclub. But when the call finishes, we learn that the gangster was setting him up for a trap, and he's murdered by one of Mr. H's men. Unfortunately for the rest of Mr. H's men, Doc Ock is smart and suspects a trap, bursting in and taking care of everyone with his robotic arms before lighting a cigar and declaring war. Even though weren't they already at war? Elsewhere and later, Peter Parker gets home and collapses in pain into his bed. He dreams about Aunt May, trapped by Doc Ock's arms, and when he wakes, he learns that Gwen and Harry have called a doctor for him. The doctor diagnoses Peter with a duodenal ulcer, and that he's to avoid spicy food, tomatoes, and stress. And while Gwen and Harry sort out the prescription, Peter just sits there in shock. How's he going to avoid stress as Spider-Man? Eventually, Peter is able to make it to the Bugle to sell some photographs of his fight with Dr. Octopus. While there, he finds his mask, which has been pinned up by Jonah. Before he can think about how to get it back, Ned Leeds approaches, sorry to hear about his aunt. He also has a lead for Peter to help find May, a domestic employment agency. Peter races away with that information, steals a costume mask from a store, and then swings across the city to investigate. When he arrives at the place, he realizes that it's only a block away from where he fought the gang, and as he rests on a chimney to let his muscles relax, he's attacked by Dr. Octopus again, who clearly has a base in the area. With his ulcer causing him pain, Spider-Man is at a disadvantage and is taking a beating, but as Doc Ock rounds a corner to finish him off, he's sent flying, and Spider-Man emerges wearing the power harness, the exoskeleton that was dropped earlier. With the costume mask making it hard to breathe, Spidey has to knock Doc Ock down with one punch, and thanks to the exoskeleton, he does. Or he thinks that's why, but it turns out that the exoskeleton ran out of power minutes ago. As he catches his breath with Doc Ock now defeated, Spider-Man's spider sense goes off once again, and he turns to find himself faced by Doc's rival, Mr. H, or, as he announces himself as the winner of the gang war, Hammerhead. Spider-Man doesn't need to know more about Hammerhead before he leaps in to attack. Pretending to run away, he gets the drop on the gangsters and is able to take down 3 of Hammerhead's best men. But when he swings at Hammerhead himself, the gang leader leads with his Hammerhead, and Spidey feels like he's hit a brick wall. Fortunately, the fight has given Doc Ock time to recover, and when Hammerhead tries to shoot Spider-Man, Doc Ock attacks, and the bullet merely grazes Spidey's head, knocking him out. As Doc Ock leaves while taking out more gangsters on the way, it seems that the gang war is now in full swing, and so Hammerhead takes our hero as a hostage. Spider-Man once again dreams of his Aunt May, and how he got caught up in this gang war before he can find her, and when he wakes, he's in Hammerhead's office. The gangster makes him an offer he can't refuse: join him or die. Hammerhead then gets one of his henchmen to swing a gun at his head, to show Spider-Man just how tough he is. We're then treated to Hammerhead's backstory. He was an unnamed man found dying next to an Al Capone mob movie poster by Jonas Harrow, a former surgeon who had been discredited for untraditional experiments. Harrow decided to save the man's life, and so for 3 days he operated on the man, while the man dreamt about gangsters, his head filled with the poster that he saw as he was dying. When he woke again, he had a metal head, the personality of a 1940s gangster, and no name, so he called himself Hammerhead. Back in the present, Spider-Man stalls, still feeling weak from the fight and from his ulcer. He's saved by the bell when Hammerhead receives a phone call. It seems that some of his men have been tailing Doc Ock, and they found him at a manor house in Westchester, living with some old broad. An old broad? That can only be Aunt May, Spider-Man thinks, and so he slips a spider tracer on Hammerhead before the gangster rotates his entire office and then leaves to go after Dr. Octopus, leaving Spidey in the hands of 2 of his henchmen and in pain from that damn ulcer. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Gwen is feeling guilty and confides in Professor Warren when he asks about Peter's whereabouts. She thinks that it's her fault that Aunt May went missing, her and her cruel words. When Flash arrives in Harry's car and makes light of Peter's ulcer, Gwen snaps at him. Peter's one of the nicest, sweetest men in the world, and worth 12 of Flash. And Flash had promised not to joke about him anymore, and maybe Flash should learn to keep his promise. And then she storms away. Back at Hammerhead's base, and we learn that it's Porky and Benny guarding Spider-Man. When Porky notices something, can't you usually not see Spider-Man's eyes in his mask? Spidey uses that as a distraction, webbing up Porky and Benny's faces, knocking them down, rotating the office, and then diving outside. He's quickly able to find Hammerhead's car and rides on the roof to their destination. Since he thinks his Aunt May is inside, Spider-Man silently takes care of the gangsters who are arriving to ambush Doc Ock. Spidey then finds the Doc, brooding in his office, and so our hero finds an open window elsewhere and sneaks inside. As he sneaks through the house, searching for his Aunt May, there's not a single tingle from his spider sense, even when he's hit over the head with a vase. As he falls in pain, about to fall unconscious, he wonders why his sense didn't warn him, and he's out cold when we learn that it was his Aunt May who hit him. His spider sense clearly didn't consider her a threat, and Spidey's now paying the price, as Aunt calls for Dr. Octopus, worried that she killed that awful monster Spider-Man. But we leave Spider-Man there and go to just another night, where Spider-Man sees a strange man stumble and fall to the sidewalk. When he goes to investigate, he finds out that the man is the Vision, the android Avenger. Vision begs Spider-Man to help him before passing out. While his roommate Harry is asleep, Spider-Man sneaks Vision into his home, just in time for the android to wake. Vision explains that he keeps having seizures, each coming more frequently than the last, and before he can say more, he's hit with another attack. Elsewhere, and back in time a little, we catch up with the Puppet Master, a villain who can mold puppets to control people. He has found a spaceship, crash-landed in the water, and inside he has found a robot. Creating a puppet of that robot, he takes control of the alien, ready to use it to destroy the Fantastic Four. In the present day, he plans to do just that. He orders the robot to fly him to the Baxter building, and uses the robot to destroy all security and get him inside. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Harry Osborn wakes to the sound of voices outside, but finds his apartment empty. Funny. He was sure he heard Peter talking to somebody. Peter, as Spider-Man, is taking Vision to the hospital, where he can use the equipment to examine the Vision's mind, to discover the source of the seizures. And he does, learning that Vision has two sets of brain patterns in his mind. One is his, and one is unknown. But Spider-Man is able to track the mystery brainwaves, and his device leads him to the Baxter building. Spotting the two heroes arriving from inside the Baxter building, the Puppet Master orders his robot to attack. And while Vision suffers from another seizure, more powerful now that he's closer to the source of his suffering, the robot attacks Spider-Man. Spider-Man is outmatched, as the robot burns his webbing away and knocks him around. And even when he gets a good hit in, the robot shows no sign of stopping. As they fight, the Vision becomes incorporeal and floats down into the building, finally stopping when he reaches the Puppet Master. Seeing the villain control the alien robot, Vision figures out where his torment is coming from, and he reaches through the Puppet Master to destroy his puppet. And so, just as Spider-Man is being electrocuted, the link between the puppet is severed and the robot falls, defeated. Vision thanks Spider-Man, explaining that the robot was a Skrull scout that shared a similar brain pattern that interfered with Vision's own. And then the Vision flies off, before Spider-Man can ask why he was alone, or why he couldn't ask the Avengers for help. And then we're back to an unconscious Spider-Man, the victim of his own Aunt May. Hammerhead bursts into Doc Ock's mansion, and the gang war continues on a residential level. Doc Ock locks himself away and uses lasers to shoot at Hammerhead's men, before sending his men in wearing gas masks and firing gas grenades. But, using his famous Hammerhead, Hammerhead smashes his way into Doc Ock's office, and the two fight each other. The Doc's metal arms keeps Hammerhead away, but they're no good at keeping bullets away, and so Doc Ock flees, letting them think him routed, but really he thinks it's time to move to a new base. He just needs to find Aunt May. And he does, finding her about to call the police, but he puts a stop to that, with a subtle cut of a wire. Meanwhile and elsewhere, Gwen is at the Daily Bugle looking for Peter. As Jonah grumbles about never seeing Peter until he needs money, Ned tells Gwen about what he told Peter, that Aunt May had gone looking for a job and found one as a housekeeper in Westchester. Smelling a story, Robbie commandeers a Bugle car and brings Gwen and Ned along. Back in Westchester, and Spider-Man is awake again and searching for Aunt May. He sneaks past some of the gang still at war with each other before finding Hammerhead. He surprises the gangster and hits hard and fast, but a solid blow from Hammerhead's hammerhead into Spidey's ulcer-affected stomach knocks our hero down, and Hammerhead leaves, claiming that something he found in Ock's control room is going to lead to the whole city falling into his lap. As Hammerhead drives away, the Bugle car arrives and, hearing gunfire, Robbie calls the police. Inside, Spider-Man is struggling with his pain when Doc Ock rounds the corner with Aunt May by his side. Spidey thinks that he's kidnapped her and he attacks the Doctor, not holding back. Using the Doc's arms, he swings the villain into a wall and hits him again and again and again. He only stops when Aunt May yells at him, and he looks up to find her holding a gun, threatening to shoot him. At this range, there's no chance that she'll miss. Fortunately, at that very moment, the police arrive and their sirens startle May, so she lets off the gun in surprise and just misses Spidey, giving him chance to dive out of the window and escape. Seeing the police arresting the gangsters and seeing Aunt May safe, Peter takes the opportunity to change out of his Spider-Man costume. As he's doing that, May tells Gwen that she shouldn't feel guilty about what she said, that she was only speaking the truth. Then Doc Ock is taken outside and requests a word with May, quietly talking to her away from anyone who can listen. Pretending to have got lost, Peter meets up with the gang and is happy to see his Aunt May, but she tells him that her leaving is for his own good, that she's been trying to tell him this, he's a grown man now. She then reveals that she'll be staying here, taking care of the house in Doc Ock's absence. As she walks back inside the mansion, Peter is left flabbergasted with no idea what to say or think. And on a plane at a New Jersey airport, Hammerhead reveals an envelope that he stole and thinks to himself that when Dr. Octopus gets out of jail, it will be Hammerhead and the Doc against the world. And that's the end of 1972. Thanks for watching and joining me on this journey to read every Spider-Man comic ever, and thanks to my patrons listed here, especially Christian Robertson. Next video we start 1973, and it's time for someone very important to die.